There we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name's Laura, and I'll be handling the technical side of things tonight. But first, I'd like to introduce Cynthia. Cynthia is co-founder of the Awaken Life Project, and she works with people all over the world to awaken them to the reality that they are always already free. Cynthia does retreats, podcasts, and these webinars, and is really passionate about not just giving people a spiritual experience, but for real transformation to take place in themselves and their lives. And with that, I will hand over to Cynthia.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Okay, nice to see you all. So tonight's going to be kind of interesting, I got a feeling. So you have to stay tuned. We'll have to do our regular meditation first, and then we'll see what's going to happen. Okay, so let's just take a moment for everybody to find a comfortable position. Sitting up straight, your head is up, your back is straight, your shoulders are relaxed. And just take a moment to quiet yourself down. Take a moment just to be. Being aware maybe of the agitation of the mind, being aware of the speed of the body if you've been very busy today. Be aware of the silence. And if it's noisy where you are, just be aware of the noise. You can be aware of the sense of peace, or you can be aware of agitation, or anything in between. Be aware of the relaxation that you might feel in the body, or equally be aware of the tension. You want to take a few deep breaths to allow yourself to breathe very, very deeply, expanding the lungs, letting the belly relax. And as you exhale, be aware of the breath leaving the body. And again, breathing in very, very deeply. And exhaling. And one more time. Breathing in, feeling the air coming into the body. And exhaling and releasing. So as you sit here, rest as that which is aware. It doesn't matter what your experience actually is right now. It doesn't matter if you're happy. It doesn't matter if you're sad. It doesn't matter if you feel nothing. The content that's arising in awareness right now is completely irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything if you have happy thoughts. And it doesn't mean anything if you have aggressive thoughts. So as you sit, be unconcerned with the content that's arising in your awareness. You don't have to deny it, and you are not fascinated by it. You might recognize that the content is constantly changing. The sensations in the body might be changing. Emotions might be going up and might be going down. The mind might be moving very quickly or not at all. It all is what it is. If you have a quiet mind, it doesn't mean that you are a fantastic meditator. If you have an active mind, it doesn't mean that you are a bad meditator. The content that's arising in your awareness right now means absolutely nothing about you. Because the content is arising within you as awareness itself. So we habitually think that thoughts are in our head. And we think a thought means something about me, about you. The habit is to personalize thought. A thought arises, and you say, oh, that's a bad thought. I'm a bad person. I have something to fix. I have something to be ashamed of. I have something to hide. And maybe a positive thought arises, or what you consider to be a good thought. And if you personalize that thought, think, ah, I'm a good person. And now you have something to prove and something to protect. And another thought arises, and you personalize that thought. And you add that to your story. Now I'm a smart person. Another thought arises, and you add that to that story. And then the story continues. The structure is created in your own mind of who you think you are. All because of the personalization of thought. or feeling. So the problem is not the presence of thought or the presence of feeling. Thought is just thought. Feeling is just feeling. It's the personalization that creates the illusion of the separate self. So as you sit and you watch the content that's arising in your awareness right now, or if nothing's arising, you're aware of nothingness. But recognize that you, the witness, or that which is aware, is not changing. It's not moving. It's clean and pure and untouched by anything that's arising, whether it be a thought or a feeling. So freedom is here and now. It's always available when you shift and relax into your true self, which is that which is aware of all the fluctuating content. So can you let that fluctuating content, can you just leave it alone? Can you let it be? And if you see yourself personalizing a thought and contracting and making a story, and you become aware of that personalization and that contraction, can you let that be? Can you keep your hands off? And even if you see the mind racing, and even if you think you're identifying with thought, you're never stuck, because you can always recognize that you are aware of the whole entire play. You are never not yourself. You are never not awareness. You are never not free. But if you believe and personalize the content that's arising within awareness, and you create a story called yourself, you will not recognize the freedom that's available here and now. It's not because it's not there. It's because you've turned away from it and become fascinated with the creation of your own story. So as you meditate, just recognize that the mind may be moving, There's sensation arising. Thought may take all different forms, good ones, bad ones, ugly ones, beautiful ones. You may have emotions going up and down and back and forth and all over the place. But you are not moving. So freedom is the recognition of yourself as that which never moves, that which is always deeply at peace. So there's nothing for you to fix. There's nothing wrong with any of you. Who you are at the deepest level is already perfect. But we all have a very strong habit to personalize thought and feeling and to make a story. So the awakening process is all about waking up to the truth of here and now, and waking up to the fact that there is no separate self. There's an individual called you, a body-mind called you, but you are not separate. And the body-mind called you is arising in your awareness. So just take a moment and be. And no matter what's happening, it doesn't matter. It just is what it is. And you don't need to let it be as it is, because it already is as it is. So it's recognizing that truth. It's not creating it, it's recognizing it. Okay, so take a deep breath in and exhale. Feel what's going on. And another deep breath in and exhale, and just appreciate the breathing process. And one more time. Inhale. And as you exhale, open your eyes. Okay. It's very, very simple. We tend to be very complex characters, but it's actually very, very simple. So, the name of the webinar tonight, I had to write it down because I kept forgetting the exact words because it's really long. What does it mean to embrace all of life as it is? Okay. So I was thinking about this today, and a quote popped into my head. And it's a quote that I first read quite a long time ago. And it's a quote that I took on my very first long retreat that I did. And it was super helpful. And it's completely, it's a good one for tonight. So I'm going to read the quote to you first. And then I'm going to tell you a story to help illustrate the quote, and to also illustrate the title of the webinar tonight. So the quote is by Eckhart Tolle, and it says, "Don't look for peace. Don't look for any other state than the one you are experiencing. You will set up an inner conflict and unconscious resistance. The moment you completely accept your non-peace, your non-peace becomes transmuted to peace. Anything you accept fully will get you there. This is the miracle of surrender." Did everybody hear it? Did everybody get it? Pretty simple, right? It basically means that there's nothing, you don't need to change the experience that you're having in order to be free. Isn't that a relief? So one thing you can do to see what causes you all your suffering is you can just look throughout your day and see how often you are trying to change the experience that you're having. It's almost constant. And every once in a while, you might have a little moment, right, of acceptance. And then there's like this expansion and you just feel happy. And then the next moment, trying to change your experience again. So I'm going to tell you a little story about my day today to illustrate this point. So the last couple of days, I haven't been feeling very well. I've been very tired and I've been having a lot of vertigo. And if you've ever had vertigo, it's very unpleasant because everything starts to spin and you feel quite nauseous most of the time. So I woke up this morning and I thought, oh, okay, good. Nothing is spinning. And then I moved a little bit and everything started to spin again. Started to feel nauseous and I'm like, oh, okay, shit, here we go, spinning again. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm spinning. That's the way it is. So I get up and I'm kind of stumbling around and I have to feed all the cats and the dogs and, you know, do all the things I normally have to do. And I'm doing it and, you know, it's okay. I'm just kind of doing what I'm doing. And then it got to the point where I was feeling really sick. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna call Fiona, who's here right now, and ask her if she can give me a cranial sacral treatment because everything was quite agitated. So she gave me a treatment and it was helpful to some degree, but I was still spinning, still feeling quite nauseous. It's a beautiful day outside. Everything's good. I'm spinning. I'm nauseous. Everything's fine. Keep going. And then she said, you know, I think you should turn off your phone and just go out in nature and just relax. And I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So I decided to go to our Chestnut area, which a lot of you have been to. So I go to the Chestnut area and the first thing I do is I run into the sheep and the sheep don't want to move. So here I am, I'm spinning, I'm walking to the Chestnut area, right? And I run into these sheep and the sheep don't want to move. So then I got to get past the sheep. So then I get past the sheep, I get to the chestnut area, and I'm wandering around and I'm thinking, where's the spot I want to lay down in and just relax? So I'm looking around and I see all these beautiful wildflowers everywhere. So I don't really want to, squish any of them. So it took me a while to figure out where I was going to lay down. So there was a tarp there. I finally lay down. And of course, when I lay down, I start spinning it even more. And I'm like, wow, okay, I'm in this beautiful place and I'm spinning. I got to close my eyes. It's crazy. So anyway, so then I decide, okay, I'm gonna go. I need to go soon. And I had my phone with me, and then my phone ran out of battery, because I always take my phone with me in case I fall over, right? Because I'm spinning. And so here I have a phone that's just ran out of battery and I'm spinning. So then I walk and I cross I'm crossing over, and then I'm walking back and I run into my cat, Lola. And she's out there kind of hunting or doing something. I don't know what she's doing. And she starts growling at me and hissing at me. And I'm like, oh, great. Okay, she's growling and she's hissing. Lola can do that sometimes. And I'm thinking, that's no problem. Okay. I'm kind of just going with all this. But then I try to get past Lola and she attacks my feet. And I had flip-flops on, so it was kind of painful. So here I'm spinning in my head and my feet are being attacked, so it's not, things are happening. And so then I get back to the house and I can't remember what I did. I do stuff. And then I'm thinking about the webinar and I have like a complete blank. I have like no inspiration whatsoever at all, like zero. I have nothing. I'm thinking I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say about anything. And, this happens sometimes and it doesn't bother me because I'm kind of used to it. And the older I get, it seems like the less, less is going on upstairs sometimes. But anyway, so then it's about 5:30 in the afternoon. And I thought, well, I'm going to go outside and see what's going on. I'm feeling a little bit better. And I'm still feeling really tired and kind of, feeling very uninspired, to be quite honest. And I go into the courtyard and I run into a couple of the people who live here. And they're like, you ready for the webinar? And I go, well, actually, I'm not very inspired. And I'm just being honest with my experience. And they're like going, yeah, okay. And I can't remember, we had kind of this conversation and we all started to laugh about, me being uninspired and them being tired and uninspired. And we're all talking about how uninspired we are. And as we're talking about how uninspired we are, we're actually having a great time and we're laughing and we're quite happy and inspired, but not about anything in particular. And then Dan comes, Dan and Nina have had the wonderful job of the last 2 days of cleaning out our storage area where we've had a lot of mice. So it hasn't been a very pleasant thing. And they come up and they look completely exhausted. And then we just start talking about, being uninspired. And then they're happy. So we're all sitting there in this courtyard. And all of a sudden I realized this is what I'm going to talk about on the webinar, because this is the perfect illustration. My whole day has been the perfect illustration of what it means to embrace life as it is. And I wasn't suffering. Stuff was happening. My head was spinning. I didn't feel good. My cat was biting my feet. I'm doing a webinar. I have nothing to say. I mean, if you look at your own experience, you probably could have different details, but your life might look similar, and maybe some days are easier than other days. But in a certain way, the point is, and this is why it goes along with the quote, it's the moment that you actually accept your non-peace or your non-inspiration. That's the moment that non-peace and that non-inspiration is transmuted into peace and inspiration. It's not because something particular is happening. So peace and freedom is not dependent upon a particular condition. Peace and freedom is always here and now when you stop insisting that your experience should be different. When you accept, If you have a broken leg, if you think about it, you break your leg. If you have a broken leg, your leg is broken, right? Acting like it's not broken or it shouldn't hurt isn't going to make you be more peaceful. You're going to set up, like Eckhart Tolle was saying, you're going to set up an inner conflict and unconscious resistance. And you will suffer. Why? Because you're not accepting what is. If your leg is broken, your leg is broken. If my head is spinning, my head is spinning. If something is challenging, something is challenging. If you're in quarantine, you're in quarantine. Now, it doesn't mean that if you're accepting your experience as it is, it doesn't mean that you do nothing. It doesn't mean that you're not responding to life circumstances. So I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying. It's not that if someone comes up and hits you in the face, you just go, oh, he's hitting me in the face. I have no response. But if you imagine that scenario, if somebody hits you in the face, they've hit you in the face. It doesn't help if you deny the fact they hit you in the face, because they hit you in the face. So if you're with that situation, you're accepting it, then your response is going to be coming not from a place of contraction, a place of resistance. You'll have a free flow response that will come from a deeper dimension of yourself that is always already free, always already calm, always already okay. So if you imagine the ocean, and this is a metaphor a lot of people use, the ocean is the ocean. Deep in the ocean is very calm. At the top of the ocean, the waves are fluctuating. Sometimes you have a very calm day in the ocean. Sometimes the waves can be very, very strong and very big. But it's all the ocean. So you accept that the ocean is the ocean, and the manifestation or the modifications of the ocean will look different. Sometimes the waves will be calm. Sometimes there won't be any waves at all. Sometimes it'll be crazy. But if you recognize that the waves are just the ocean, and you're not creating a problem if the waves are bigger than you like it, or smaller than you like them, you're accepting the waves for what they are. So this is a practice that everybody can do. And the first thing is you have to be aware. Just watch. Everybody can do that moment to moment. You don't need like a specific situation. You don't have to wait for anything. Just whatever your experience is, just notice throughout the day, because you're busy, right? You're not even aware that you're aware. You're just in your life. You're doing what you're doing. But just take a moment sometimes and stop and say, okay, what am I aware? I am that which is aware right now. And then look and see, am I trying to change the experience that I'm having? If you're a regular meditator, this is a classic thing that meditators do. They have an idea if the mind is quiet, it's a good meditation. If the mind is crazy, it's a bad meditation. So you sit down to meditate, right? And the mind is going crazy. And then you're making a problem. Why? Because you have an idea that if you're going to be a good meditator, then mind needs to be still. So you spend your whole meditation trying to quiet your mind. And you're trying to resist the fact that the mind is actually busy. The mind is just a machine. It's just doing what it does. So if you think about freedom, is freedom conditional? Are you free only under certain situations? Now you may feel free under certain situations, but is freedom actually conditional? Or is freedom always here and now, no matter how you feel, no matter how busy your mind is? So if you think about it, freedom has to be unconditional, because if the mind is busy, and if you accept And you don't resist that the mind is busy, because the mind is busy. Don't forget, if the mind is busy, it's busy. If you deny something, it doesn't make it so. You're just trying to fool yourself, right? You're trying to fool yourself. Why? Because I have an idea that the mind should be quiet if I'm doing meditation correctly. But that's not it. Freedom is here and now, if the mind is busy or not. So then you get up from the meditation cushion. And then again, you have ideas. My day should go like this. This person should act like that. I should be like this. You have all these ideas. And then guess what happens? It doesn't work out like that. Have you ever noticed that very rarely, whatever's happening, it doesn't really line up with how you think it should be? It doesn't happen very often. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that does this. Okay? So freedom is recognizing that it's not conditional. It's just not. And then freedom is here and now, no matter what. No matter what. So what does this tell you? It tells you that if you're suffering, it's because you are trying to change the experience that you're having. You may feel pain, but the acceptance of pain will bring you non-pain, because you'll be resting in something that is prior to all pain, all experience. And at the same time, you're a human being in the body, and human beings feel pain. It's unavoidable. But just because you feel pain does not mean there's a problem. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. If you actually allow yourself to feel, you will be liberated no matter what you're feeling. So when you allow yourself, when you actually allow yourself to be the free expression of who you are, your experience as a human being is going to constantly be changing. But if you allow yourself to feel, you see your heart will open. If we're picking and choosing, I don't like this experience, I don't like that experience, I want to get away from this pain, I want to get away from this, I'm seeking for happiness because I feel unhappy, it's a constant movement. And that constant movement is one of agitation and frustration. So all of you are on this webinar. You wouldn't be on this webinar unless you knew that there was more to life than the experience that you're having. You must have some intuition that life is not just suffering. And probably all of you on this webinar are seeking for something. And that seeking means you're trying to change the experience that you're having. So you're seeking for peace. But as you seek for peace, you are going to be denying the peace that's always already there. It's kind of like if you're sitting on a chair right now or a couch or whatever. You're sitting on a couch. I'm sitting on a chair. It's like denying there's a couch and denying it there's a chair and spending your life looking for some place to sit down. And then one day you wake up and you go, oh my God, I'm already sitting down. I didn't know it. The chair has always been there. The couch has always been there. And I'm running around trying to find some place to sit down. Because I'm convinced that there's something wrong with the experience I'm having. So this is super, super important because it's so accessible to everybody. You don't have to study anything to do this. You don't have to know anything. You just have to sit and look and see, how often am I trying to change the experience I'm having? And I tell you, it's so liberating when you catch yourself doing it in real time, because then you're seeing the movement of the mind and you recognize it's like, oh my God, I'm doing it. I'm trying to change my experience right now. You see, and in that moment, you recognize I am that which is aware of the movement that's happening. And then you go, look, I'm trying to change my experience right now. I don't need to do that. Whatever experience I'm having, as soon as you recognize, I don't need to change my experience, you see that experience. It's not the experience that changes, it's your relationship to the experience that changes, and how, and then you find yourself surrendered to something prior to the experience. So you can be having a crazy day, like I described my crazy day to be. Did I feel great? No. Did my head hurt? Yes. Did my cat attack me? Yes. You know? But it didn't ruin my day. And I can even say, you know, would I prefer my head didn't hurt? I mean, in a certain way, yeah, I could say that. Of course I could say that. But in one way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I wasn't resisting the experience I was having. So it's like what Eckhart Tolle was saying. You know, it's the, I have to get my computer back up here again. Anyway, it was the part about surrender. Because not trying to change the experience that you're having, that is surrender. That's the miracle of surrender. It's the miracle. It's the miracle to see that there is nothing to seek for. It's the miracle to see that you are always already free. And you can also see, wow, there's also some purification that needs to take place here, because it's obvious I'm habitually trying to change my experience. Okay, I need to make the effort to not habitually do that. That's the purification. But as I'm making that effort, even if I make a mistake and I go back to my habit, you see, what's my relationship to that habit? What's my relationship to that experience? Freedom is here and now. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about the recognition of what I'm saying. It's the recognition. It's not the creation of. So that's very doable for everybody. And that's where there's radical transformation available. So I sent out some questionnaires because we're putting together a membership program for ALP for people. And so we're kind of doing a test and doing some marketing research by sending it out to people I know and asking them what they think. So Rick is one of the person, he's on the call tonight, is one of the people I sent the email to. And one of the things he said that differentiates what Awaken Life Project is doing opposed to other things is, he said, you know, there's a lot out there that's about self-improvement, but you guys are about radical transformation. You see, I'm not telling you to improve yourself, improve your ego. I'm saying freedom is here and now. Radical transformation can occur here and now for everybody. I don't care who you are. Because probably none of you are more screwed up than I am. We're all, you know, it's like, we all have our stuff, let's face it. We could compare notes and probably make a list, and some of our craziness is probably the same, and maybe we have different nuances, but you know, radical transformation is available any moment that you surrender and let everything be as it is. So what does it mean to embrace all of life as it is? It means freedom. It means recognizing that you are always already free. And it's also recognizing that all the things that you resist is actually consciousness itself, or you could say God, kind of knocking you on the head, saying, wake up to the truth that freedom is here and now. Because when you resist, you suffer. And if you accept your suffering in the way that I'm describing it, you see, then you'll recognize who you actually truly are in that moment. And then you do it again and again and again until you become convinced. And that's in your hands. Nobody can do it for you. But nobody can take the capacity away from you to be able to do that moment by moment. So it's radical transformation. It's not self-improvement. We're not trying to improve your ego. We're trying to transcend. And that means through understanding and through recognition, not through changing anything. So this is either good news. It's good news if you want to be free. This is really good news. If you're very attached to your problems, not such good news. Okay, and everybody's attached to their problems, but this is part of the purification process. So nobody's stuck. Nobody can convince me that you can't do this. You just have to decide if you want to. And then be very, very humble, because it's not, it's very simple. But as human beings, we're very complex creatures. And we're very attached to our complexity. But that doesn't matter, because if we accept our complexity, if complexity is occurring, surrender occurs. The miracle of surrender makes itself known. Okay, everybody with me? Cool. See, we're in it together. This is really good. Okay, so let's move into the Q&A part of the evening, or just to share your experience. So if you're completely inspired and excited about not making your experience mean anything about you, then express it. Okay? Because life is about responding. So if you have a response, don't be afraid.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Teresa.
Hi, Cynthia. I'm waiting for, since the beginning of the lockdown, to be on this webinar.
Cool.
I was on a retreat with Peter in September, but I never met you. And I was on the retreat very restless.
Uh-huh.
And then when they've started the lockdown, I decided to find some time to look inside of me. Would be the best I could do with my time, because I was and I am very workaholic, and I always knew that there is more than working and fighting egos and fighting life. But now I decided to have the time to look a bit inside, and I've started listening to all your webinars, and you are so inspiring, Cynthia. Sorry to say you don't feel inspired, but it was fantastic. I had a really overwhelmed experience by listening to almost all your webinars, and I cannot describe more than this. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you very much. And second, I'm doing something which is really experience for me right now. Is in Peter Facebook, I found something which is very interesting on this my stage of life, which is a sentence that says something like, I am not what you think I am. You are what you think I am. And I'm trying. This is about I've been trying to work with something that you say, which is became important for me, or became, I don't know, a challenge, or to observe me, to see how do I personalize thoughts and feelings, how much I personalize thoughts and feelings, how much I think they are me. And I'm doing this exercise, which is observing what I'm feeling when I'm with people, and really arriving to the conclusion that they are what I am. And it's overwhelming completely.
When you say that they are what I am, are you talking about you recognize the one consciousness that you both are, or are you saying that you recognize that you're projecting yourself onto them?
I recognize I'm projecting. I
Okay.
recognize that I project. That people are not what I think they are. They are what I think. I project, basically. And and I'm also trying to work in something that you are just saying, which is accept life as it is. So accept all my emotions, and accept except I'm in lockdown. So why should I go? Just be happy because I'm take advantage of being in lockdown. And if I'm dealing with pain, it's okay to deal with pain. So it's fantastic, Cynthia. It's really a fantastic experience I'm going through during this lockdown. And I just want to say, I don't want to take all the time. Just want to say thank you very much.
You're welcome. And it's beautiful, Teresa, because what you're describing is the awakening process, right? Because you're waking up to that which is prior to all of the work and all of the craziness, but you're also waking up to the movement of ego within yourself. And you have to have both in the picture, because we have to be real about this. You know, there's some people, you know, like Ramana Maharshi, you know, all of a sudden, you know, he's 16 years old and his mind is blown, and the separate self is completely destroyed. But for most of us, that's not the case. And we live in a world that is very complex, and the complexity is, you know, the complexity in another person is pulling on the complexity in you or in me. And so we have to be able to recognize all of this complexity that's happening. And we have to recognize this habit of projection. We have to recognize the constant need to change our experience, and that we have to recognize the personalization of thought and feeling. But as we recognize that from a context of prior freedom, you see, we can be free and recognize all these egoic habits. So we don't have to deny any of our experience. This is what it's about. You will probably find, and maybe you already found this, but the more you wake up and the more interested you are in this, you're going to find out that you're probably a bigger egomaniac than you thought you were. Okay, because you're starting to see it. It's becoming conscious to you. So it's not like we're bigger egomaniacs than we thought we are. We're just becoming conscious of how attached we are to thought and feeling and the personalization. But you see, so that's part of the awakening process, to be aware of that. And then we go, yeah, but I'm not that. I am that which is aware, and that's my habit, and I can choose to do something different right here, right now, in this moment. You see, but it's coming from a place of I'm already free, and I'm a work in progress as far as this body, mind, and the purification it needs to go through. So this is like a no problem situation. So it's a fantastic thing. This lockdown is such a huge opportunity. So I'm actually really happy to hear the process that you're describing. because it probably wouldn't have occurred if the lockdown hadn't have happened, because you'd be so busy working, right?
It's exactly what I feel.
Yeah. And so that's why it's so important now that we're coming, you know, we have the opportunity to come out of lockdown, depending on what country you're in. You know, in Portugal, we're just able to come out a little bit now. You know, so what are we going to do, though? Are we going to drop all this interest in freedom when we're out of lockdown? Are we going to go back to being who we were before? The world that existed before no longer exists. Because we've all gone through something and are going through something that has never happened before. You know, it's quite an extraordinary time. I think everybody's noticed that, right? I mean, have we ever had this much time to just slow down and stop? That's part of it. But also, have we ever been in a situation where we've got so many contradictory news and facts and whatever being thrown at us, to the point it's very difficult to understand what I believe and what I don't believe. You know, so we've got a lot of stuff going on. But how much are we going to wake up? You know, and I think a lot of people I've been talking to, you know, have a similar story to Teresa. It's like using this time to wake up, to transcend things, to transform. So let's keep it going. Hey, Sue, I just saw your hand was up. Hi. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Hi, Cynthia, and hi, everyone. This is my first time here this evening, so thank you for that, and thank you for your words, Cynthia. Now, my question is, yeah, it's in response to that, what you say about, can you hear me okay? Because I can't see, is everybody hearing me?
Yeah, it's very clear. Okay, are you frozen, Sue? I think it's Sue's connection. I think so. Is Sue typing? Sue, we can't actually hear you now. Okay, maybe we'll go on. And Sue, if you can hear us, when you come back on or you unfreeze, we'll pick up and come back to you. Okay, anybody else?
Oh, Charles.
Charles. Hello, Charles.
Do I unmute myself? Yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Good evening. I'm going to ask a question on the.
Hang on a sec, Charles. Sue, we're going to go to Charles because you left, and we'll come back to you. Okay. Okay.
Sorry, my signal dropped off, but yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, Charles.
Yeah, my question is on the basis of your introduction, and it is about the pair love versus fear. I'm not speaking about love for dogs. My dogs, for instance, I love them very much, but that it easily disappears when they don't eat their food, or if they tear apart the stuff that I have bought in the supermarket. So it's a kind of a love that is a big eternal love, love with capital. And I thought I had an insight the other day, because when I felt this, when love was in my awareness, there were no fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think everybody suffers by fear and wants love.
Mm-hmm.
But in your layout here points to something that is deeper, because was it because I was surrendering to that love that I felt this lack of fear?
Well, probably. I mean, fear is usually, it's coming from a separate self. If you think about any kind of fear, it's usually a fear of being seen. You might have a self-image or a certain idea about yourself, and so there's fear for something contrary to be seen, or it's the fear of death, that you're going to die. So, it's a funny thing because you're talking about love, and so love is something, if you're talking about the love that's prior to and the essence of everything that is, that love never dies. And it's interesting because there's a book that Barry Long wrote. He's a spiritual teacher from Australia. And the name of the book is Fear Only Dies. It's only fear dies. You see, so when the body drops, the separate self drops, the separate self dies, because it doesn't exist really. So when the body drops, all the ideas of maintaining the separate self dies. So fear dies, but love continues. Consciousness continues.
Yeah.
And I just want to say something though that I think is important when you gave the example of your dogs, because I know you, and see, I think that the love for your dogs is always there, even when they're chewing up the backseat of the car or whatever, or the groceries. So the emotional response to your dog in any given moment is there. It might be one of anger or frustration or whatever, but the love is not taken away. So I think it's an important distinction. And it's important to realize that, like the love of a child, or love of a parent or whatever, that love is always there, and you might be frustrated with them. But when we're in relationship, a lot of the time, when we go too deeply and we personalize a thought or an emotion or something, then it's very, very easy to withdraw love. And if we're withdrawing love out of frustration or out of anger or out of fear, it's egoic. You see, because there's no reason for any of us to ever withdraw. Withdrawing in this case means separating. So even if you're in complete contradiction with another person, you don't have to agree about everything. If you're in complete contradiction over something, you see, you never have to impose separation, because separation never exists. There's one consciousness animating everybody on this call. There's all these different individuals. And we could all have a very probably lively conversation about probably lots of things right now, and have all sorts of ideas and opinions we might have, where I think I'm right, you think you're right. But you see, it's not about taking that position, of not engaging in that way, of having a lively conversation. But we don't need to divide just because we have differences. And we don't need to divide just because the dog chewed up the groceries, or the husband irritated us or something. You see, so that's the whole point. And sometimes it's looking at it from the other side. You look at it and you go, even if you think you're dividing, you can't divide. You cannot separate. But you see, we're so used to thinking separation always already exists, and I'm going to try to come together with other people. But what I'm saying is that we're always already together. And even if we're insisting that we're separate and we're suffering, it may be our experience that we're separate. Truth is that we never are. There's nowhere that you can go to get away from yourself or me as consciousness itself. We're all that one. So again, it goes back to recognition and understanding. So you have to find out for yourself. That's the point.
Yeah, but I wondered if I mean, the fear I was maybe without saying it, I was referring to more was coming up here in the quarantine, the fear of what's going on in the world and where will all this go and so on, and the almost epiphany or whatever it was. I mean, insight that I had was it was very easy to. It's very easy to be tempted to say if only I could feel love all the time, then I wouldn't feel fear and act in all these terrible ways that fear makes me act.
Yeah, but that's
not your mission today to say that one is good and the other one is bad.
Yeah, because you get to choose how you respond to any given situation. And if fear is arising, fear is arising. But there's not a problem that there's fear arising. It's just how are you going to respond to it? And if you recognize fear is not negative from one perspective. Because I mean, I don't want to go into this too deeply because I don't want to take too much time. But there's lots of other webinars I've talked about this where, everything that's arising in this relative world, everything that we see, everything we perceive, everything that we can, touch and taste, it's all arising from the same source. It's all a modification from that one consciousness, just like the waves are a modification of the ocean, but it's all the ocean. And so fear is also a modification of consciousness. Okay? But when fear arises, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. The human being is going to feel fear. But fear is also something that can drive us to wake up to that one consciousness. And when we do that, you see there's an acceptance and a recognition that consciousness itself is, how can I say this? There's a recognition that that there really, in the absolute sense of the word, there actually really is no problem, and it doesn't really matter what happens with all this quarantine stuff. But what does matter is we all have to decide of how we want to live, because we are here in the body. And so we have to decide. So if fear is arising and, let's say you're being challenged because, there's some rule that you don't want to go with, and there's a lot of fear to go against the establishment or against the law. You have to decide, each individual has to decide, do I want to go against that fear? And do I want to stand up? And I'm not telling anybody they should stand up or they shouldn't stand up, but each individual has to decide, how do I live? How do I want to live? And so we're going to have to face some fear, maybe, in order to make a stand on how we want to live or not. So it's all, I don't know if I'm being clear on this one with you, Paul, but fear is not a problem, but it doesn't have to go away. You always have a choice on how you respond to any given situation. And fear should never be an excuse not to respond. I think that's the whole point.
That's a very good answer. I mean, I'm very satisfied.
Okay, good, I'm glad. Okay, cool. All right, Sue, let's come back and see how it works this time.
So yes, so thanks, Cynthia. My question is really around pain and the process of waking up.
Mm-hmm.
And I work as a psychotherapist, and I'm really interested in change processes and the waking up process.
Mm-hmm.
And often what I notice is that people very often don't really listen to their pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when they really listen to their pain that change can really begin to happen and begin to unravel.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, until we really listen to the loss of biodiversity and the earth changes that we're currently experiencing right now, we have to really take in those difficult messages to really wake up to the world that we're living in, and also to find and harness the energy for change. It's often when I think my question is around the personalization of thoughts.
Uh-huh.
That what I'm hearing you say, and I maybe misunderstood that, I don't know, because it's my first time here tonight, but somehow I feel like there are times when we need to really hear those difficult messages and those thoughts that come in, because it's maybe not just our pain, it's maybe the earth's pain, or it's the pain. We live in a very systemic, interconnected world. So sometimes what we experience isn't just about us, and it needs a voice and it needs to be heard. And that, to me, the awakening process is that we're in this together, and that it can sound like maybe what I can partly hear, and it may not be right, is that there's a slight way of somehow disconnecting
No, it's
from
actually
the reality of the other's pain. So just curious to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the question. I think the difference is I'm looking at everything through a spiritual context. And that context is basically that there is only one consciousness, and we are all a modification of that one consciousness. And so the pain and the suffering in this world actually occurs when we deny that truth. Because as soon as we personalize a thought or a feeling, let's just go with thought because it's easier to talk about. When we personalize a thought and we make it mean something about a separate self, okay, we make a thought mean something about a separate self, and then we create an image and an idea of who we think we are. We think we are what we think we are what we feel, we think we are who we, our history, and that's all who we are. That's it. Okay, so when we personalize thought, it's actually the creation of the illusion of the separate self. The individual is there. The individual self-sense does not have to be the separate self. Okay, so when somebody feels pain, for example, I'm totally with you. They have to be able to feel that pain. When you feel that pain, though, you see, you also get in touch with the fact it opens one's heart. And that's the awakening process. It opens you up, right? Because you're allowing yourself to be with what is. Because if pain is arising, and there's a lot of pain, and everybody's always denying pain and fear, but also people are denying happiness and love, right? So we're denying quite a lot. And so what I'm basically trying to say is the way we deny quite a lot is through the personalization of thought and feeling. The creation of the separate self creates a certain box that we call me. And within that box called me, I have certain things I will accept and certain things I won't accept. I'll have certain things I'll face and things that I won't face. And so that's basically the avoidance of opening up to the pain and the love and everything else that's beyond these walls of the egoic self. Okay? So when I talk about the personalization of thought and feeling, it's not bypassing pain. It's actually opening up and recognizing that you are not this box of limitation and separation. You are that which is prior to that. You are an individual waking up to that truth. And as the individual wakes up to that truth, we're able to feel more. Why? Because we're not trying to maintain this. Because when we feel something that's outside of this, it freaks us out. And we want to avoid it. And then we're separating from the other. We're the so-called other. But we're also separating from our true heart. So I think this, I wanted to say one more thing, because what you were just saying, you see, because the only reason we can destroy this planet, and the only reason that we can be violent against each other, violent against animals, is because we're convinced we're separate. Mm-hmm. If we allow ourselves to feel those walls of separation collapse, we feel more, and we recognize that that which I used to want to harm is also me. There's a spiritual reality that we're all here together. I am the planet. I am you. I am, what's going on in this world. But all these things that are going on in this world that are violent and harmful are because we're taking this position of separation, even with our best intentions. So the waking up process is really about non-avoidance. But you have to feel a hell of a lot more. You have to be willing to feel more than you can ever imagine. And the only way that you can do that is by letting go of the walls. And the waking up process is you might start off thinking you're this, and then the walls get a little bit farther apart. And you have more capacity to feel more, to respond more. And then you recognize, again, you wake up and you recognize, oh, I am not that. I am not, the personalization of thought and feeling. You do the practice, you find out, and the walls keep getting bigger and bigger until you recognize one day that there are no walls. And there never have been any walls, and there never will be any walls. You see, and then you're fully available to respond and to do something different and to feel. So the waking up process has everything to do with allowing oneself to feel, to engage. But it's not from a position of, I need to feel this so I can fix myself. It's, I need to feel this so I can wake up to that which is prior to, that which is prior to the pain and the suffering, that which is prior to the illusion and all the ideas I have about myself. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm just thinking about, as you describe that, it still sounds like it's somehow located in my awareness. And somehow my sense is that how my awareness, how I can both bring in and bring the awareness for everything all at in the same time. It's like, and whether there's I suppose the question is also about activism, sacred activism. So as I wake up, I see that as an active process, right, which enables me to recognize my connection to all living beings, but actually also recognize the power imbalances that have suppressed and kept certain kind of some voices more marginalized. So somehow how to go together, not just as an individual.
Yeah, you'll be able to recognize all that. But I think the difference between the perspective that I'm trying to get across and what you're saying, I think the difference is I'm saying that there is no separate self in there that's controlling anything.
Yeah.
You see? Because when you wake up to that you are that. You are everything. And then within that everything, you'll be called to maybe be an activist. Maybe you'll be called to be a psychotherapist. Maybe you'll be called to be something else. But you see, it won't matter what you're called to be because you're just available to respond. So there's that aspect of it. But as someone wakes up also, there's more of a pure transmission of that which is prior to the relative world. there's a pure transmission of consciousness itself coming through the individual. And don't forget, if we're all modifications of consciousness, and some of us are more awake than others, let's say, you see, the more you wake up, the more you're pulling on that pure consciousness in the other person. And so you're inviting them to basically drop some of their walls. You're not taking a position of separation, so you're inviting them and you're putting them in a state of relaxation if they're interested. Just by putting the finger here and saying, you know, what am I doing? What stand am I taking? Am I personalizing thought and feeling?
Mm-hmm.
You see, and then you will do what you do, and it will be what it will be. But all we can do as individuals is all we can do is make the decision to surrender to that which we know is true. And as we surrender to that, then we will respond. And people will be affected and will wake up, because you're inviting them to do something different, to step out of this, you know, this imposed separation and limitation.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that too. I believe that too, as we change internally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
you know,
I'm
it's
just aware I've taken a lot of time. I realize, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
Might
it's
be
fine.
others.
If you were
Yeah.
taking up too much time, I wouldn't continue talking.
Yeah.
No, but it's really important because, you know, that we have a lot of ideas about a lot of things, you know, on how things should be. And the more I feel in my path, the more I wake up, the more I realize that I have ideas about things that actually I start to question. And I'll just throw one of them out. And it doesn't mean, you know, also that, let's just say that there's an idea that that the earth needs to be saved, like human beings need to go and save the planet. Okay, that is an idea. It's not necessarily a truth, because maybe the planet is already taking care of itself and we just don't know it. So now I could sound like, well, what's wrong with you? You know, don't you care about the planet? And I do care about the planet, but I care enough about the planet to open up to the possibility that maybe everything is going to take care of itself without me imposing an idea of how it's going to happen. And within that, there has to be a willingness to respond. But if we come from a view that this is how this is going to change, this is what's needed to happen, and it's too rigid of a view, we'll miss a bigger picture. And so it is a surrender to, you know, it's a surrender to being in service to that which needs to happen, and not an idea coming from an idea of coming from my own mind of how everything is supposed to change. I don't know if that makes sense. But it's, yeah, but I really do think that the whole world can change if you know, it's all about transcending this imposition of separation onto that which is not separate.
It's a privileged position. That's one thing I would say. It's a position of privilege to be able to not have to live with the earth, the direct impact of earth changes. And how do we bring that into our practice? And how do we take that on as well?
Well, I think the way we take it on, though, is we go through the process of purification in ourselves, so that we actually are in service to something higher than the individual idea about something. And then we will respond. And I think that's what true spiritual activism is, because to me, it's about the surrender, and then you will get your job assignment. It's not about getting the job assignment and then trying to do it well. Obviously, we want to do it well, but it's really about the surrender. So anyway, I think we could have more conversations about this, Sue, so I hope you come back. No, because it's very interesting, because it's not about a bypass. From just talking to you for a few moments, I know we're on the same page, because there's care, you know, we care. Mm-hmm. And And then it's just a conversation to say, well, how do we respond to that pull in our heart? You know, and also, how do we live from a place of prior freedom? And that's the big question, because everybody can have an experience, you know, of that which is beyond the mind and that which is prior to, but how do you actually live it? That's the point. It's not that hard to have an experience. I mean, probably all of you guys have had lots of experiences, but how do you live it? That's what we're trying to figure, you know, that's what we're trying to do. And it all has to come from surrender. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of human beings getting together with a lot of ideas that are conditioned, trying to figure it all out and figure out who's right and having consensus and talking forever. And, you know, it gets to be like, you know, the whole world is falling apart and we're still in a meeting trying to figure out who's right.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Okay, I guess we're at that time. It's very, very nice to see you guys. It feels like it's been a while now since we had 2 webinars in a row, right when the crisis happened. So it's great to see you. And Laura's going to bring up some stuff. We do have, we'll put it out. Laura always does a letter the next, and an email the next day to put out links. So if any of you guys are interested, on Sunday, Rick is part of a group called the One Day Meditation. So on Sunday, I'll be the guest teacher doing a guided meditation on that day. And so tomorrow we'll send you a link to that if you're interested in joining for that. It's actually a very beautiful thing that Rick and his team does every month. So I'm lucky enough to get invited this month. Okay, I'll let Laura do her thing.
Yeah. Remember to turn your.
Oh.
We have technical things. So, thanks, Cynthia. That was amazing. I just wanted to let you know. Yes, so I'll be sending an email out with the recordings and anything that we speak about tonight or have spoken about, including the next webinar. Links to the page for that, which is June the 3rd, first Wednesday of the month, as usual. And then I will also send you links to Cynthia's podcast. For those of you who haven't encountered it yet, it's really fantastic because they're 20-minute long slices of sanity in this crazy world. So I'll send you the link, and I want to draw particular attention to podcast. There's 12 now, right? And podcast number 9 is about opening to new ideas and transcending fear. And that's a really pertinent one for these times. So I'll send you links for that. And a lot of the podcasts actually are about the current crisis, but they're all applicable to whatever is going on in your life. So it's kind of the big picture and the personal picture at the same time. So I'll send you that, and then I'll also send you links to our the Awaken Life Project events page. And of course, we're not really sure what events are going to be running or not, given the situation hasn't been made clear yet. But Peter Bampton, Cynthia's partner and co-founder, is doing an online course. He wrote a book called The Fire of the Heart, and he's doing an online course with the same title. So I'll send you links for that as well. And I think that's it.
Am I turning my sound back on?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Woo. Okay. All right, great. Everybody, if you'd like to open up your microphones, and we can all say goodbye, and hope to see you next month or on Sunday, if not before.
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Yeah,
Have a good night.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing.